From a trade union point of view, I think I'm safe to say that in Scotland, the STUC's commitment to scrap Trident is as strong as ever. And obviously, the bolt-on from a trade union point of view is that there's a lead-in period for alternative investment into those communities that would be affected by its cancellation. All this is well laid out in the wonderful joint report that the STUC did with Scottish CND a couple of years ago, and still very relevant. The support for a nuclear weapons convention as well is totally at ease with the STUC's policy, and it's indeed a logical progression for the trade union movement in Scotland to follow that policy, and may actually also be food for thought for those trade unions that are still resolutely multilateralist, because it does kind of make you make the decision of why is nothing happening on the multilateral front. And that takes me back to a couple of references we were speaking earlier, Tim, about the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I remember Blair making a statement about his commitment to Trident and saying that, well, we are multilateralists, and whoever was interviewing him said, well, why haven't you entered into any talks on a multilateral level? And he said, well, there weren't any. You know, forgetting the fact that it's actually beholden on, under the NPT, of those that do have nuclear weapons, to actually start talks on how they're going to remove them. And I was reminded by that by Cameron, I think it was this week, when he said, we can't give up our nuclear deterrent because there are so many countries now wanting nuclear weapons. And this was exactly why that clause was put in the NPT when it was written and when it was passed all those years ago. It was beholden on those countries that possess nuclear weapons to enter into talks to get rid of them. Otherwise, you would have loads of countries saying, well, they've got them, they're keeping them, we want some of them as well. And this logic doesn't seem to penetrate. So the traditional policy of supporting the scrapping of Trident and alternative investment is still at the core of the policy of the STUC, and the point's well taken about it being the possibility, if we're talking about a wider treaty, that could, a convention, that could actually encourage wider support and more unity. In the current economic climate, the sheer cost of Trident, a replacement, is a powerful argument against it. And the point was well made by Alan when he said this could be a crucial element of linking in with the wider cuts campaign. And the ludicrous cost of Trident will become more apparent and will be counterpointed as the libraries, the schools are closed, as the benefits are cut, as hopefully the campaigns against cutbacks, like we saw magnificently from the students, are generated in other areas. An equally powerful argument against Trident is the alternatives of where that money could go, of investing in renewable energy industries, which the money could be useful for. And I feel that it is important to actually put the point of saying we don't want to scrap Trident on a financial basis because that would be a saving that we didn't have to make elsewhere. I think it's important to put the point that this money should be invested in productive uses, and the industries around renewables and alternatives to coal-fired energy and others. Things like offshore wind turbines, the production of those and the construction of those is a powerful argument, and this is where the investment should be going into something very consistent with the campaign led by the STUC, There is a Better Way. when we say that we should be investing productively to build out of the crisis that we're in, rather than maybe just thinking about saving the Trident money as a saving. The deliberations of the political parties on the deterrent has been enlightening as well. Before the election, we had Brown implying that there was a possibility that we might move down to 3 Trident submarines instead of 4. The recent government's budget plans and defence review have insisted, which was, I thought, quite remarkable, insisting that Trident actually takes its place in the defence budget and is therefore up for grabs within cuts that take place in the defence budget, instead of what Labour said they would do, which would be to keep it as a ring-fenced item. So that was an interesting departure. Because, I think the point's already been made, the military do not like Trident. Alistair McIntosh was speaking about this a couple of months ago. I was listening to him, and he goes and talks to the military about perspectives from the peace movement. And their point is that it gets in the way. It's not something that they're happy with using. They don't see a practical application for it. It gets so in the way, budgetary-wise, of the other toys that they want to buy that they do find quite useful. So the attitude of the military is very much one of not really wanting to have a nuclear deterrent and identifying it very much with the politicians who use it as a totem and as an indication of our status as a nation and our, what was the quote, our place by right on the Security Council, which would be threatened if we gave up our deterrent and things like that. There is no question, I don't believe, to the coalition government's commitment to Trident. Its future form is potentially intriguing if we do indeed go down the road of integrating with the French. It was quite an expression, I thought, of political Europhilia by the coalition government, and by implication possibly interpreted as a rejection of the special relationship that we've had with the United States for many years. For those of you that might anticipate from that proposed alliance that we will be getting potential to build bridges with French anti-nuclear trade unionists, or indeed a strong French peace movement, might be disappointed. The trade union movement in France has many virtues. Its propensity for occupying the streets of their cities and for taking direct action when faced with problems is something I wish we could maybe see more of in this country. But a strong anti-nuclear position is not one of the virtues of the French trade union movement, I'm afraid. I was at the anti-NATO 60th birthday demonstration in Strasbourg, I think it was about 18 months ago, and there was very little evidence of a French trade union presence there. Looking wider at peace and defence, the trade union movement here is fairly unshakable in its commitment to the conventional weapons industry. It sometimes can be quite contradictory when you're making a peace argument at a conference, which in the nuclear side of it is broadly accepted, but then when you start challenging other elements of what you might call a broader peace agenda, you find you are not exactly held down, but people will come up to the rostrum after you and disagree with the points you've made. But if we're looking at things like the jobs on the Clyde, the aircraft carriers, as somebody who would call himself a peace activist, I don't believe that aircraft carriers can be portrayed as part of a defence policy. But until a real initiative does occur as far as alternatives, as I was speaking about, possibly production for offshore industries, it's sad but apparent that the shipbuilding industry, certainly in the UK and in Scotland seems to be, for the immediate future, largely in the thrall of the defence industry. On a couple of wider issues on where I'd like to see progress on our work across Scotland through our different bodies is the weapons convoys, the nuclear weapons convoys. I was a participant on the first week of the Footprints for Peace walk across Scotland back in August. I did the first week from Gretna to Glasgow, and we were meeting teenage kids in places like Moffat. And these kids had seen these convoys going through their communities, these 3 huge lorries carrying warheads. And there's no going along at 30 miles an hour with police escorts and flashing lights and kept away from sort of the general traffic. These are just travelling on our highways with maybe a couple of police vehicles in front and behind. You can theoretically overtake them, reach out and touch them. And a possibility maybe about the delay in commissioning a new warhead might mean that the current warheads we've got might need even more maintenance to keep them up to scratch, and therefore that these convoys might actually increase. If people here haven't seen the video by Newtwatch and the camcorder guerrillas called Deadly Cargo, please go and see it, because we were showing that on the walk as we progressed through Scotland. And there was work done, and I'm not sure where it is now, in Holyrood or around Holyrood, about the potential health and safety considerations of these convoys, and whether there was a way of having a go at the nuclear industry by picking up on that and making it difficult through legislation. I'm not sure where that work has gone. I would like to see it, as maybe somebody could say in the discussion, I would like to see that sort of jazzed up and brought back again, because that was a way where we could actually make things difficult. Another issue that I picked up on the walk, and it's something that I've been largely unaware of, is the issue of the origins of the uranium that's used not just militarily but for civil purposes as well. Uranium which is mined in places like Australia and Canada, in largely indigenous lands, where environmentally communities and lands are laid waste by the uranium mining industry. And the fact that I see little policing of that, I see little concern about where our uranium's coming from, the same way we might sort of consider fair trade elements, where our t-shirts are coming from, who's making them. In the nuclear industry, we don't seem to be casting our eye in the right directions on that, and I'd like to see more work done within the peace movement in Scotland generally on that issue. So the trade union movement in Scotland, I can see us moving to be very strong supporters of the idea of a nuclear weapons convention. I also see the fact that the delay in the Trident timescale is no reason for relaxation, and I think it actually gives us the potential of hammering home the attack on Trident, and that must continue. And again, I think as the cuts start to bite, the counterpointing this massive totem of international power politics is going to make it even more of a standout for criticism and being able to unite people to campaign against it. Nuclear-free local authorities was mentioned. George Regan, who's a Dundee councillor, is actually the chair of that body at the moment, and myself and him would like to extend an invitation to all of you here, and as many people as can make it. Myself, George, and many others will be celebrating our 30th Hiroshima Day commemoration on the 6th of August next year, with our traditional torchlit march up the law and a small meeting and commemoration at the top. We've been doing it for 30 years. It's quite a long tradition of an event that's proved immensely successful and consistently held over the years. and as a representative of both Dundee Trades Council and Dundee CND, it would give me great pleasure to see as many of you coming through to share that event with us in August. Thank you very much.